Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Much Is Wrench Set. I appreciate everybody being here. We've got a very special guest tonight. We've got Andy. He is a good friend of mine. He's kind of the unspoken 80s and 90s GM king. I tell you, I think he knows more codes and VIN numbers than the people at GM who made the cars. So, Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself and yeah.
Well, I could just be bullshitting you on all this stuff. It might just be fake info.
I think it is. I think it is.
I've kind of been into cars my whole life, ever since I was a little boy with Hot Wheels and stuff. My grandpa worked for GM and retired from the GM plant that was on West Broad Street. And my dad always drove a Chevy, and I kind of just was raised a Chevy guy and always been into cars.
So I wish the audience could see your collection, because you've got some property out on the west side of town. How many cars do you have in total? Not to put you on the spot.
I don't know. I'd have to go through and think about it and count them all.
You got that many?
It's probably around 15.
15.
Well, a couple of those are parts vehicles. But
yeah,
right in that neighborhood somewhere.
Nice. Now, folks, I asked Andy to come on because kind of like Chris, he's one of those guys that you've got a question, they seem to always have an answer. They seem to always know, at least when it comes to Chevys with Andy. He's helped me out with quite a lot of things. He seems to always have a part. You tell him, hey, I got to go buy this part next week, and he seems to pull it out of his stash in the back barn somehow the next day for you. I didn't know you said it was your grandfather?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know he worked for GM.
Yeah, from 47 or 48 around in there, and they retired, I think, in 87.
So there was a GM plant here in Columbus back then?
Yeah, where the casino is now.
What did they make?
It changed over the years. I know for a while he made door latches for the square body trucks, and before that he was making seat springs for I think pretty much all the various car models of General Motors. But
so it was GM. It wasn't Fisher Body or AC or.
It was always GM owned, but it was, for most of it was Fisher Body, and then they got into the Delphi, and it changed names over the years, but it was always a GM plant. He was an employee of GM. Nice.
I didn't never know that was there.
Yep.
I don't think I'd ever heard that. Nice. Well, I kind of see where you get your background then, because I'd say you've got some newer Chevys now, but when I met you, I think the newest thing you had was probably 1990?
For the longest time, I think the newest vehicle I owned was a 93. And at the time I owned it, it was, I think, 10 years old. And later on, I had a 99 Silverado, which was then the newest model year I had. But at that point, it was old enough, it was no longer the newest vehicle I ever had.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Sometimes it seems like every time I get a new truck, it's still like 3 generations back. It's new to me. I think I'm upgrading, but it's always years back. But hey, that's how it works for us. So I say you're the 80s GM king. At least for people I know. Do you think you are? I mean, how do you consider your knowledge? Like in the realm of GM, I mean, do you, like on the forums and things, do you feel like you're pretty well versed, or
some things? Yeah, I would say I am. But most of it is just from owning so many different ones through the years. And there was a time where I would go to the junkyard every weekend, sometimes just on Saturday, sometimes Saturday and Sunday. And when you go to the junkyard that often, you see a lot of stuff, and you kind of tend to remember some of it, which models came equipped with what, and when things were changed body style or whatever. You hold on to some stuff.
Yeah, I feel like people can do a lot of learning, like just walking through a junkyard. I feel like just seeing things torn apart, seeing parts of cars you might not have seen, seeing cars in conditions you might not have seen. I feel like there's a lot to learn at a junkyard, and I hate to say it, but I don't get to the junkyard much anymore. It might be once a year. It's just not much anymore. I don't have a lot of reasons to go, mostly because, I hate to say it, because of the internet. They made it so convenient to buy car parts that I just don't have to go to the junkyard that much anymore. Now, maybe that's me being lazy, but
Well, I don't get to go very often anymore. I'm right about there with you, maybe once a year anymore, but it's usually because being out of town traveling or something. But
yeah, but your backyard is a junkyard, so you don't really need to go anywhere. I say that positively. I mean that in a good way.
some people say that in a negative way. They say it's where Chevy's going to die.
No. Well, I think junkyard, I think so many people associate the word junkyard with being a negative thing. I think junk yard. They think it's all garbage, and it's not. I mean, even at a junkyard, say in a rundown part of town, it's not usually junk. It's good stuff. And I mean, some people say they do have, like, say some people with some land, sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I got a junkyard going on out back, but it's not, a lot of times it's not a junkyard. It's all, what do they call it? Junkyard gold. It's all good stuff.
Rusty gold.
Yeah, Rusty Gold.
Rusty
That's
Gold.
what it is. I think Junkyard Gold is a one of those shows on Motor Trend. But yeah, I feel like there's always good stuff to find, and I miss going. I need to go again soon. We should just go. We should take this show on the road one of these days. I don't think we're quite at the technical limit or technical ability to do that, but
Maybe in a little bit of time.
yeah, maybe. But so we've established that you said 15 cars, something like that.
Around there, yeah.
Give us some highlights. Give us some things, because I know we did this with Chris a little bit. We kind of went over what he drove, but you've got such a wide array of years of GM cars and cars and trucks, and I don't want to say SUVs because older Blazers aren't really SUVs, or are they?
No, they kind of, I don't know who thought of the terms SUV, sport utility. A lot of them weren't very sporty, so I don't know who thought about that.
I feel like it was a marketing guy. I feel like the term SUV kind of came out of marketing, because I mean, a Blazer kind of is what the new SUVs are for all intents and purposes. But I feel like a marketing guy was like, well, listen, we can't sell it like it's a truck. We need to call it something else. We need to, and unfortunately, out of SUV years later came the term crossover, which
Right.
I've got mixed feelings about the term crossover. But
Yeah,
I mean,
jack of all trades, master of none.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, to get back to it though, what give us some of your highlights, like your favorite cars that you own. What are some of the toys that you've got hiding out back there?
They're all my favorites. It's like picking kids. You can't pick your favorites.
That's the right answer.
But I started, I've always, as a kid, I was always into the 60s and 70s and even the 50s stuff. Went to car shows with Dad, and I was always into, Chevelles and Impalas and Novas and Camaros, as like anyone else of the time was. But after a while, they just got to be so expensive that it kind of priced a lot of people out of the market, and I ended up with a couple of Impalas. My first car was a 69 Impala, and I still have that. But due to the cost of it is kind of, I think, why it pushed me into some of the later stuff, and in the 80s, the third gen Camaros and stuff. And I ended up with, a Camaro and celebrities too. I like Chevy celebrities, which most people.
Yeah, you do like some of your front wheel drive 80s stuff, which I can't say I ever got into, but I probably just because I don't know much about it.
Well, all it takes is just owning one, and one good one that's not a piece of crap, and actually driving it and tinkering with it, and you grow to like them, and that's how I've kind of stuck with them. If I find something I like, then I just kind of stick with that instead of moving on to something else. So.
Well, and that's good. And you mentioned third gens, and that kind of brings up a good point. It was funny, before I met you, I heard about you for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Through various friends that you were kind of this unspoken third gen king. I know I called you the 80s GM king earlier, but really, like, I heard about you as being this third gen guy. Like, you got a third gen Camaro question. And when we say third gen, we're talking about 82 to 92 Camaros, F bodies. Yeah, you were like this unspoken guy. I pictured an older guy, actually. I pictured a guy in his 40s.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, kind of well-aged. And I remember coming out to your property one night years ago and finally getting to meet you. And I was like, wow, how could this guy have accumulated all this knowledge in this short amount of time? But Yeah, that's kind of how I met you as like third gen guy, and then I learned you weren't just third gen Camaros. You were trucks, you were engines, you were everything. I mean, really, I mean, you're kind of the definition of a car guy.
I've never really got into transmissions, but 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 yeah, trucks and cars. I like both, and engine work, paint and body work. I don't discriminate in the different areas.
See, I discriminate from paint and body. I kind of said this recently. Paint and body's just something I never learned the patience for. It just takes a level of, because it's a whole skill unto its own. There's people that know everything and that are just good with cars in general. I mean, just can do anything. And then there's people that are just more mechanical, like myself. And then there's people that can do paint and body and mechanical, or just paint and body. Some people couldn't turn a wrench to save their life, but they could.
Yeah.
I mean, they could make a pig look like a Cadillac. I mean,
well, it is. It's tedious work, paint and body, and you got to put in a lot of detail work. But when it all is done in the end, it shows it, and you can just look at it, and that's your satisfaction right there. Is like, I did that, and that looks good. How many people can say the same thing? There's not a whole lot of people can take a crack at it, but it may or may not turn out so great. But
yeah, and you said you've got a '69 Impala.
Yeah.
What condition is that in?
Well, it's been sitting at the garage, actually at my mom's house, for the last it's probably been almost 10 years now. I had been kind of neglecting it. Where I was living at the time, it was too big to fit in the garage, so I couldn't garage it. And it spent a lot of time sitting out in the driveway or both beside the garage. And I had a couple brake lines rust out on it. But other than that, it was a running, driving car. The engine had been overhauled. It was a little 327.
Coupe or sedan?
Four-door hardtop.
Okay.
And but it had been sitting out a while, and things were starting to go on it, and I didn't like seeing that, so I went and cleaned out my mom's garage so I could put it away in there because she wasn't using it. And I drove it there, parked it, and haven't got it out since then.
Now, if I remember right, don't you actually have two Impalas?
Yeah, the blue one in the pole barn, that's a 70. It's basically the same car, but it's a two-door hardtop.
And that's original, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It's been repainted once, and it had a lot of Bondo slathered into the quarter panels.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, but it's pretty much all original. Just normal stuff. It's dual exhaust and polycarb, aluminum intake, still factory manifolds though.
Now, is that a 327 as well?
It's a 350.
That's 350.
Yeah,
okay.
327. The last year for that was 69. So starting in 70, the base V8 was the 350.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, it was funny when I bought my '69 Camaro. I feel like Shady is putting it nicely, but the Shady company the business that I bought my Camaro from, they told me, yep, 327. It's got a 327 turbo 350, which they got the transmission right.
Yeah.
Well, it was the original 307, which was fine, but they said, this has got a 327. It's that high winding engine. And then I looked, I was young. I didn't know much. So I looked more into it, and I was like, 327 is pretty good because you can wind them up. You can rev them. But didn't have a 327. Had a 307. So yeah. I've never gotten to experience the 327.
Mine being the later one, I've never really wound it out, I guess. Of course, it's been so long, and it was in my younger days when I was really screwing around with it, so there's a lot I've forgotten about it. But
you're still a young guy.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But
say you're only as young as you feel, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm 40.
Yeah, I don't feel young anymore. But by 69, the last year for them, they were kind of. I think the stock output on that was rated at 235 horsepower. So not a whole lot to speak of, and it was the small valve heads and no longer a forged small journal crankshaft. It was basically a 307, I guess,
yeah,
but a little bit larger bore.
Yeah, I guess so. Oh well, I've actually still got my 307.
Mm-hmm.
Still got the numbers matching block and heads. It's in the garage. I figure I'll always keep it with the car, but yeah. So you've got the Impala. What are some of the trucks you've got?
They're all square body trucks, which that's all, again, another modern term, probably within the last 10 years. They used to be called just old body style trucks. But let's see, I got a 77 K5 and a 78 Suburban, 79 K30, and 84. Well, that's a little C10 pickup with step side that looks like a 79 now, and 88 Suburban. And yeah, I think that's the current ones.
Now that K30, is that the one that I think it was the very night we met. Was that the one that I tried to persuade you into selling?
That'd be the one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be the one.
Yeah, that was that's a big block, isn't it?
Yep.
Big block. And tell us a little bit about that, because that's a sharp truck.
I'm the third owner of it, I think. Yeah. It's pretty much original, other than the previous owner, who was the second owner. Well, obviously, he put the lift kit on it, and he actually did the big block swap. It was originally a 350 small block.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. But yeah, he did the engine and lift and tires, and had a real super cheap paint job put on it. But other than that, that's pretty much how it came.
Is that the same paint job that's on it now?
Yeah, it's getting really dull these days.
Oh yeah, it happens. But that was a good looking truck, because it's on the it's period correct between the lift and the are they Swampers, the tires?
They're actually the nickname for them is Feed Store Mutters, because it's like they're old bias ply style tires you get like a co-op.
Bias ply, okay, yeah, but it's got the look.
They've got a groundhog type of tread pattern to them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's a good looking truck. It's what you would have wanted in, like, what'd you say, 1987 maybe?
in the 80s. Yeah, it had some shocks to it and and a chrome roll bar. It'd be what the trendy thing was then.
It's perfect, and it's a crew cab.
Yes.
So it's a big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sharp looking truck. Nice. So I tell you, talking about these classics, one thing I wanted to touch on, since we both own some older cars and still do, the market nowadays for classic cars, especially right now in 2019, I feel like it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the classic car market is, I would kind of argue, the highest it's ever been, as far as, both availability and pricing to get into classic cars. What do you think's going on right now?
Well, it depends on what your definition is of a classic. If it's the standard 64 through 72 muscle car that 10 to 15 years ago, the prices were really through the roof, I think, and they've kind of leveled off or come down since then. But the 70s and 80s car, well, and even in the 90s now, they're really starting to pick up, and at least I think for their value, going off what people have been paying for them recently. It's double what it was just a few years ago, I think.
Yeah, because you used to be able to get in a third-gen Camaro or an 80s Chevy truck for a good price,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's double, triple that. I mean, I think my most recent other Camaro was a 91 that I bought 3 or 4 years ago for a couple $1,000. Now I don't think you could get in it for under $4,000.
No, that's probably about where it'd be now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it's? I feel like it's just the economy. I feel like it's just the economy. Everything's going great. The market's great. Employment's great. Arguably, I mean, things are going great. Do you think that's really the main factor in everything being so expensive? Because everything, let's be honest, everything is. And when I say everything, I mean like older cars. Let's say 1990 and older. I feel like it's, and again, like you said, it depends on what it is. But as far as muscle cars, classic trucks, short bed, single cab trucks, everything is really hot, and it's hard to get into it right now. If you're looking to buy your first hot rod, if you're starting out, if you're kind of a smaller budget, I feel like it's a bad time.
Yeah, again, it depends on what you're into too. Like if you're into this, square body trucks and third gen Camaros like I am, then yeah, now is an expensive time to get into it. But you get into some of the less popular vehicles, like say the Chevy Celebrities that I'm into. Those things are still dirt cheap. They're not going to go up. They're not really desirable. But now the problem with those is they're all gone. You can't find them anymore. They're old enough to have been junked. So
well, that's because you've got half of them.
But every manufacturer has those models that there's going to be people that like them. Not a large group of people, but they're going to have a following, and those are going to be cheap, but hard to find now. But the Fox body Mustangs and stuff like I can't really think of anything in the '80s of Chrysler that people are going for now. But
as far as Chrysler stuff, I mean, that's just always expensive. But '80s Chrysler, yeah,
because they had the Shelby Omnis and the Chargers, the little 2-doors. But
yeah,
I don't think those are really bringing in a whole lot of
not
money
yet.
compared
No,
to.
I think those still have their time to come. The front wheel drive Chrysler stuff, and some people really get into that. I think those they haven't had their time yet. I think it's coming, but. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Fox bodies. Fox bodies have been expensive for years.
Well, yeah, they were very popular long before the third gen Camaro was popular. I mean, the Camaro still had the reputation of being a mullet car.
Yeah, and I think they still do. A lot of people still really don't like the 80s Camaros. But when we say Fox body, we're talking about, let me make sure I get this right, 79 to 93.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a Ford guy, but I know that.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I try to at least get my Fox body years right. But that platform, I mean, it's desirable. People want those years, and I think part of it, because those were, they're really high right now. The Fox bodies are, but they were high even 5 or 6 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and I think it's because that's a lot of car, because they're strong. They're fairly good for what they are. I think a lot of it was just because it's good. It was cheap-ish, so it's kind of like, because third-gen Camaros, they're not the fastest things in the world, and I'm not saying a 90.50 Mustang 5-speed is, but they were faster than the third gens.
They were neck and neck. I mean, you look back at the, it's kind of interesting to read through old Motor Trends and Road and Track and stuff, and they were pretty much neck and neck. Usually straight line Mustang had it, but the third gen Camaros were always ahead in handling as far as I'm concerned. They had better driving feel, and you could swing them through a corner faster.
Well, that torque arm suspension, I mean, that was pretty innovative. Was that new to 82?
Yeah.
Did they do that right away?
Yeah.
Okay. Because the Mustangs, they were using, I was about to say still using, I think it's a good design, but the Mustangs were using the control arms, right?
The lower control arms and the uppers, if I remember right, were kind of in a V shape, so they didn't have to have a panhard rod, if I remember. I'm not too familiar with them.
Yeah.
But that's a good design, yeah.
Yeah, I prefer a control arm rear design to leaf spring. I like sometimes I wish GM, like for my Camaro, it's a leaf spring rear. I wish they had really gone with the A-body, like the Chevelle control arm rears, but that's okay. But to get back to it, the Chevy with that torque arm design, I feel like I haven't really seen that anywhere else.
And they are one of the few, I think. There's probably, because they had some different designs, like clear back in the 50s, where they had some type of a setup like that, where the drive shaft ran through a tunnel and was all connected to the rear axle. But yeah, it's kind of they stand on their own, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good enough that they kept it till 2002.
Well, yeah. Well, and
for 20 years.
It's interesting too, because a lot of people don't know it, but the third gen Camaro was actually, when they were originally engineering that body style, they didn't know at that point in time if the car was going to be rear wheel drive or front wheel drive. So
really?
they had actually kind of designed the body shell to where it could accommodate either. So a lot of that torque arm design, I think, was just due to packaging, because if it ended up being front wheel drive, it would have had what they call a rear twist beam, and you don't have to have upper control arms. It's just the two lower arms, they're welded solid to the rear axle beam, and that's all it would have needed. But so they designed it to accommodate both designs, so it worked though.
Now that you mentioned, I think I do actually remember reading, and I feel bad that I I don't know as much as I should about this, but I think I do remember reading about how they considered going that front wheel drive, because the 70s, the smog, and then into the 80s when things got pretty bad. I mean, they were trying to come up with new designs, and you could get a 4-cylinder. A lot of people probably don't know this. You could get a 4-cylinder Camaro in the 80s.
82 through 86.
Yeah.
Yeah, they canned it for 87 though.
There you go. Nice. Yeah, and now we're back to that. But we'll, I digress for a minute, but Yeah. So the classics, we kind of got in depth there with the Camaros versus Mustangs. Poor Chrysler folks right now are like, what the hell?
Those Shelby guys, they'll have their day.
I know. I love older Chryslers. I really do. I mean, all I drive is Ram trucks for daily drivers, but Chryslers are just expensive. We were talking about the excuse me, the cost to get in the market of a classic car, and Chryslers have just. I mean, it was different in the 80s and maybe the first half of the 90s, but I mean, Chryslers have always been fairly expensive to get into.
Well, it's because the guys that, at least I think anyway, it's because the Mopar guys, they absolutely love those cars, and they didn't make as many compared to General Motors or Ford, and they rotted out faster, I think. So there's not as many to go around, and they kind of fight over them, have to end up paying dearly because of it.
Because of the rust.
Yeah.
You're gonna make somebody mad here.
I mean, they're good-looking cars, but I know parts are expensive for them. Several years ago, was the old job I worked at was doing a restoration on a 71. Yeah, it was a 71 Cuda. And
you worked on a 71 Cuda?
Oh yeah,
really?
Yeah, and I pretty much had to build the front fenders, sections of them from scratch because you couldn't find anything that wasn't rusted out. And
what year would this have been that you were there?
I was probably redoing that car. It was kind of a back burner job. It went on for a year or two. Probably around 08, 09, somewhere in there.
Okay, so not too long ago.
No, it wasn't.
It
wasn't that long ago. But just so much stuff was hard to find, and when you did find it, like the grill, I was looking for parts for I don't remember what I was looking for, but I happened on eBay, and the current bidding on a grill, it had the center grill and both headlight bezels. I think it was something crazy. It was like $2,000 or $3,000 or something. It was way more than I ever wanted to pay for a plastic grill.
And that kind of sounds right. I feel like I've been at some swap meets and seen like original AAR Cuda hoods, and they're like $2,000 just for the hood.
They didn't make a whole lot of them.
I'm impressed you remember what they cost in 09. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
I don't know. I can't either sometimes, but I retain some things.
Yeah, but it's... So, I mean, do you think... because everybody has their own opinions about where the market's going for classic cars. A lot of people think the market is good, and I guess it is depending on which aspect you're coming from, versus buyer versus a seller. But I mean, do you think the market's going to stay like this? Do you think it'll settle back down? Where do you think it's going? What do you think the market's got in store?
I think it's going to continue to go up.
You think?
Yeah, and recently we've seen kind of a decline in the nut and bolt restoration cars. They don't demand as much as they used to, and it used to be people, they'd have trouble getting decent money out of their their street machines and whatnot. It was far from stock. You had to find the right buyer that liked the exact same style you did, but these days now that's kind of what people look for, is they look for the ones with the custom touches and the modern niceties added into them, and I think those are definitely going to continue to kind of increase.
So you're talking about kind of the resto mods and pro touring and whatnot.
Yeah, those are here to stay, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like that. I think trends come and go. I mean, I think pro touring cars they're definitely having their time. They're up there. I mean, I've tried to build a pro touring Camaro. I kind of call it faux touring, because I tried to budget build it as much as I can and cut corners where I can.
You're just still in the steps of it, though.
I'm trying, but I feel like it's faux touring, because pro touring usually, when people hear pro touring in the car world, they associate that with high dollar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, high dollar, and everything on mine is blue collar, cheap. Now there's nice parts on it. I've put some money into it, but I mean, I've tried to keep things affordable where I can, which brings a good point. You talk about you just mentioned that you thought nut and bolt restorations, like frame off restoration cars, like these 6-figure cars. Do you think they're going down right now?
Some of them maybe, yeah, because there was, for a long time, the Tri-5 Chevy, the 55 to 57, it was really popular, and I think they've kind of lost some as well. A lot of it though is that generation has kind of started to pass on, but
Yeah, a lot of things are generational, definitely.
but generally speaking, I do believe that the true to original nut and bolt restorations, they're kind of being less desirable, less popular, which equates to lower value, unless you've got one of the ideal muscle cars with special for that year powertrain, or special order or something. Those are always going to be expensive.
All the special code cars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I think a lot of that is because, well, I don't know which one came first, but patina. Patina has never been hotter than it is right now.
Yeah.
In classic cars. Everybody wants that original, rusty, maybe not even rusty, but just that original paint, untouched body. Now, they still want, a lot of people still want basically resto mod underneath, but, I mean, patina has never been hotter than it is. I mean, when we went to Good Guys recently, I can't tell you how many cars I've counted, and this is in the past couple of years, I guess, how many original barn finds, like actual barn finds and field finds I've seen with just a coat of clear on them, because that's what's in right now. What do you think drove one another? Do you think the high-end builds and people not being able to afford that drove patina in, or do you think the patina kind of coming in drove those high-end builds out? Because I don't even know how to answer that.
It's a hodgepodge. I mean, and there's two kinds of patina. There's pleasing to the eye patina that everyone wants, and then there's rust bubbling, chunks falling off. I don't think that's ever going to be popular. But
yeah, I know what you're talking about, because a lot of, I mean, the patina, obviously you'd prefer to just patina paint-wise, and structurally the body would all still be there. A lot of the cars I see at shows now, the patina, they're missing a couple inches out of the fenders and the quarters, and I can deal with that, but I know what you mean. A lot of the cars are missing a gap that big on all the quarters and fenders, and they still clear-coated, and they call it good. And I mean, I guess it's okay. It's pushing it for me, but it's just what's in. It's just people going with the market right now. But I'm curious to see how long that's going to last, because I like it. I do like the patina, and I can't tell if that's just me jumping on the bandwagon with what's cool right now. But
well, it might not be a bandwagon if you like it just because you like it. I mean, and a lot of it, I like those where if it's a legit barn find and they pull them out and just kind of dust them off and clear coated. I like that, because, like, say an old pickup truck from the '60s, if you do all the paint and body work on it and make it look new again, then it's kind of like you're erasing half of its heritage. Where if it's got the original look, you've been there for it, but you kind of see like it might have a story to tell, and it adds the look of it. But the stuff that they go into such time and all this detail work to make it look like an actual barn find, I don't really see the point now. I'd just rather take that labor and just put a nice shiny paint job on it.
The fake patina.
Yeah.
I think that's putting it nicely. I've heard some choice words to describe those cars. Yeah, a lot of cars are doing like that. People will take a showroom car, a nut and bolt restoration car, and they'll strip down the paint. They'll paint it to look old. I see it a lot on trucks, like 50s and 60s Chevy pickups, Ford pickups, But people fake the patina, and it'll still come out looking good, but you can tell. You can just tell that it's not. And at that point, it's kind of
normally, yeah. Some guys are really, really, really good at it, though.
Yeah, and it looks good, but it's at that point, it's I don't know, because I try to say, whatever makes you happy, you should do it. I try to live by that theory, but yeah, a lot of times people take it too far, because they'll take a car that was an award winner, and they'll say, well, patina's in right now, and they'll cut it down. They'll cut it down, chop it, and make it look like a bad paint job. And I don't know. I don't know if that's the right.
Well, see there, I think you hit the nail on the head. If that's what you like, then do it. But I don't agree with doing it just because other people like it.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, I'm not a paint and body guy, so kind of how I buy a car is how it's going to be. I think I've never had a car painted, actually. Now that I think of it, I've never sent a car to a body shop. Never had a car painted.
It's expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive, and I just don't trust anybody. So how I buy it, if the body, I mean, I can change out body panels, but yeah, as far as sanding, blocking, painting, everything, cutting it down, I can't do all that. So how it comes is how I get it, and a lot of that sometimes I feel like is just space. I'm dealing with a 2-car garage, but I've never really had the space or been in I've never been in like a big open environment where I could create a paint booth. But you've got a little bit of property where you could kind of. Have you ever set up a paint booth at your property?
Not yet, and I've kind of brainstormed temporary paint booths that I think I'm going to have to try out this summer. Get some decent, not so humid weather. But I got space, but it's still not ideal. My garage is very low ceilings. It's like It's probably like 6'3" or 6'4" to the rafters, so I got hardly any room in there.
Yeah, it's not a lot of height, so it's kind of just a big garage almost.
It's a
as far as width.
Well, it didn't even originally start out it was built in the '60s sometime, and it even didn't originally have sliding garage doors. It was some kind of a chicken coop or hog barn or something. So
really?
It's a glorified barn.
Well, there's repurposing for you. There's the definition of repurposing. I like it. Take a chicken coop and turn it into a garage.
Yeah, it still only has concrete on the one half of it. The other half's still dirt that I've laid plywood over.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. But you've also got a pole barn.
Mm-hmm.
But it's open on one side, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the side facing away from the house for some reason.
Nice. See, and I can say I'm still a little envious though, because I don't have any property. How many acres do you have out there?
The area that I mow, it's probably only about 3 acres. But there's that whole area back there the county mows for some reason. We still don't know why. They come and mow it, but that's a couple of acres back there.
That sounds like a good deal. Maybe they'll send you a bill one day. But 3 acres is a good amount. Because property's one thing. That I tell you, I feel like if we're going to talk about markets, we could talk about the housing market for days. But property's one thing. We'd like to upgrade. I would love some more property, and like I said, sometimes I feel like a lot of the work I do, a 2-car garage isn't conducive to it. I shouldn't complain because there's people that have built award winners in a 1-car garage, or even outside. I've seen some awesome builds built in just like a Harbor Freight pop-up tent outside. So I can't complain, but property. I mean, property is nice. Property is kind of conducive to making things easier. Like, I feel like if I had a lift or room for a lift, that would make things a lot easier. What do you think is like the ideal amount of property? You think a 2-car garage is right? You think like a pole barn with a lift? What do you think's like?
I guess it depends on how much you can deal with cramped spaces and figuring out where to pack things in.
Yeah.
Because where I am now, because that garage, I think it's about a 20 by 40, and it's roughly.
And that's a decent size.
Yeah,
but like you said, only half of it's concrete.
But I still have, I utilize the other half, but it's easily twice the size of the garage at my old house, which was a real pain in the ass. It was one of those support pole right in the middle, so it got in the way of everything. But it's double the room I had before to work with, but it's still not enough. If you acquire that room, and if you're a pack rat like me, then you're just gonna fill it with other things.
Well, most people's collections probably don't include as many parts as yours does.
Probably not.
Yeah, you've got a lot of parts. I was about to say a lot of fenders but it's everything. You've got everything.
If I come across something, or especially like a lot of it was acquired when I used to go to junkyard all the time. If I saw something that I knew was going to be hard to find later on, if I ever needed it, I'd grab it.
Yeah.
And still to this day, I can't let go of things. If there's a good chance I'm going to need it, I try to hang on to it. Or if even someone else might need it, I'll hang on to it.
Yeah.
It takes up a lot of space, though.
Yeah. One thing, it was funny. I was talking to somebody recently, and I don't know why. I don't know what brought this to their mind, but they asked me if I'd seen carburetors still in junkyards. When was the last time you saw a carburetor on a car in a junkyard? And like a legitimate, pick and pull kind of junkyard.
It's been a few years, probably.
I know. I told him, I said, I don't think there's anything left. Because they cycle out the stock every now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just actually at Pick and Pull there south end of Columbus a couple weeks ago. And I think the oldest vehicle there I remember seeing was probably about it was a real clean car too. It was a Skylark. I think it was an 86.
Really?
I think that was about the oldest vehicle there.
I can't picture an 86 Skylark. Was that front wheel drive or was that still
front wheel drive?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you like your front wheel drive, so.
I was paying attention. It was a bucket seat interior, and the car only had 50,000 miles on it. And had nice bolstering in the seats and the real neat looking bucket seats. But I don't need blue seats, so I didn't grab them because of that.
That was one thing about the 80s, the interior colors. The 70s and 80s, I guess, the reds, the blues. I remember my dad had I think it was an Oldsmobile. It had that blue kind of suede cloth and
Velour,
yeah. It was nice at the time, but now you look at it and it's just, yeah.
I still like it. I like the different colors. The modern stuff where it's just you got your pick of rat gray or light gray. There's not really much to go off of.
Yeah, well, you know how I feel about interiors.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Well, yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I need to make it back to the junkyard. I really do. Let's see what's going on there. But the carbs that I was talking about. One thing I wanted to ask you, because you're a guy, you've owned a little bit of everything. I mean, here's a good question. What's the oldest thing you've owned? Oldest vehicle?
My 69 Impala.
Okay. What's the newest vehicle you've owned?
I actually currently have an 05 Malibu.
Okay. Those couldn't be more different. They kept the name over the same. They still make the Impala, but and the Malibu. But yeah, those cars couldn't be more different. So here's a question for you: so carb versus fuel injection?
I can take either.
Yeah.
I'll daily drive either of them. I don't care.
Well, that's kind of the right answer, isn't it? Either one works for me.
I've been daily driving that '78 Suburban for the last year with a Quadrajet on it, and it cold starts wonderful. And we had that cold spell a while back. It was 10 below 0, 15 below, something like that, and it starts right up. If I wasn't such a sissy, I could have driven away then, but I wanted my heat.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, it seems like anymore, carburetors and fuel injection, especially nowadays, with how good fuel injection is and how tunable it is, it seems like the battle between carb and FI is so divisive. Because a lot of people share the opinion that you do, and I feel like I do. Carburetor, EFI, both are great, just depends on what it's in. A lot of people, especially when it comes to hot rods, performance cars, drag cars, it's got to be one or the other. People are like, nope, carburetors are out. Or fuel injection, nope, it's garbage. And a lot of times it's a generational thing. I mean, do you think it's just application?
I just think it's all depends on what a person is comfortable dealing with. I think both are pretty well suited to just about any circumstance. Like I can't pick which one I'd run. Some things, it's nicer to have fuel injection just because it's something different to do, but not really out of a necessity, but for user friendliness, if you're into computers, and it definitely makes tuning easier, I'm sure. I've never got that far into it yet.
And I haven't either. I tell you, I feel like I'm still learning about carburetors. I put this Holly on my Camaro back in high school in 2005, but I'm still learning things about it. I think you told me something tonight about the
hot air inlet for the choke coil.
Yeah. We're sitting here trying to prepare for this podcast, and Andy starts telling me about things on the carburetor that I didn't even know. So it's become a shelf piece now since I did my LS swap, and still learning about it. Still learning about things. But I mean, that's anything. There's always things to learn. But carb versus FI. What would you say? So let's narrow it down a little bit. Let's say do you have any cars that are built for a specific purpose? Racing, drag racing, autocross?
Unfortunately, no. Because every time I've put something together, I'm always trying to generalize it and make it good all around in every situation, because it makes me feel like I'm getting more for my dollar. So I've never built anything, purposely for going in a straight line, purposely for cornering. I've kind of always tried to float that middle ground.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's kind of a good place to be, especially nowadays. People are starting to. One thing I do like, we talked about what's popular right now. I think one thing right now that I really really love that's popular right now is driving your hot rods.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like every time I open up a magazine, they're selling the idea of driving your hot rod. Get out and drive it. If you're not daily driving it, drive it every night. Just drive your hot rods. It seems like that's being sent home more than ever. I love it.
And I love it too, but enough people still don't do it.
I know. Well, we're spoiled. We're spoiled. I'm spoiled. I've got a newer Ram, and I work downtown, so I can make a dozen and a half excuses about why I won't drive my old Camaro downtown. But I love that. I love that it's becoming a thing. I love that that's the selling point now in hot rodding, is that you should get out there and drive. Like the whole trailer queen thing. That's starting to become a negative thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, when they were built new, they were built to drive. They still should have the same purpose now as when they did when they were new.
Well, the problem is people like us come in and tinker with them too much. Yeah. I said recently, thank God for engineers, in a good way and a bad way sometimes. But, when we start re-engineering things, I feel like we make them better, but sometimes we make them worse.
There's hiccups.
We change their intents. We change how they function. Yeah.
And some older, more wise people than me, when I've had problems in the past with something, drivability or whatever, and explain to them what's going on. There's been more than a couple times someone that says, well, where'd you screw with it last?
Yeah.
That's going to be the place to look.
That's the case. That really seems to be the case. Because, things come out of the factory meant to work universally. Meant to work for everybody. Just kind of overall. But as soon as gearheads and hot rodders like you, like myself, we start playing with them, kind of making them our own, it's like you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or sometimes 1 step forward and 2 steps back, but kind of depends on your skill and just sometimes luck. But actually, that brings up a good point. One thing I wanted to touch about, we actually have some viewers now. Some people out there were nice enough to watch and
making it big
and comment on things. Yeah, I don't know if we're making it big, but some people were nice enough to give us some questions, and they kept the slurs to a minimum. So yeah, some questions that some people were talking about. One thing that somebody kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about was our thoughts on how there's a big thing right now. We're talking about resto mods and whatnot going on. People brought up the point that there's this big push now, not even a push, but just more companies doing new car conversions to old bodies. It seems like there's a lot of companies nowadays that are doing these. They're taking a new car, you bring them a brand new Camaro, brand new Mustang, Challenger, whatever it is, and they'll put an old body on it. And they'll change it over so it looks old. You still have that style, but it'll be a brand new car. For example, there's some companies that make 69 conversions for 4th gen Camaros. I know there's some Bel Air C5 Corvettes out there, conversions. And especially recently, I've seen on YouTube a lot is Mustangs.
Yeah, I think Corvettes and Mustangs, those two body styles were kind of the pioneer for putting the modern complete, underpinnings and wrapping it in the old sheet metal and dash, and there's been several of those, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Oh,
there's a definite skill involved in it, and the people that are able to think through that whole build process before it even happens and get a game plan of what's gonna intertwine with what. It's mind-boggling. It's very impressive work.
It is, and that's why usually the price tag reflects that.
Yeah.
You're talking always 6 figures, but so. Because I kind of like it. I think that's what this viewer was kind of asking. Like, what's our thoughts on it? They didn't seem to have an opinion of whether it was good or bad. They just kind of wanted to hear more about it. I kind of like it. Mm-hmm. I kind of like this idea because it goes with this whole pro touring resto mod thing now. Instead of putting all these tens of thousands of dollars into an older car, they're taking a brand new car, which is engineered perfect, runs great. You've got all full functional drivability, mileage, and you're putting the old body on it, so you've got the style, and obviously you have to change some things with it. You have to modify the old body a little bit, but you're kind of getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it's like for, it was kind of the go-to thing to do for a while was, putting Corvette suspension, like back in the day was the C4 suspension or the Mustang 2 rack and rear suspension and the Cobra independent rear suspension.
Yeah.
Those were the big ones, but they've kind of taken that a step further. We'll just put the whole dang modern car underneath there, and it'll work even better.
I still remember one of the first times I saw that done was it was a Hot Rod magazine feature, and it was probably 10, 15 years ago. I think I was still in high school. Somebody had taken like an 03, 04 Cobra, so independent rear suspension, supercharged, I think it was still 4.6, but yeah. But they took an 03 Cobra, the factory car, and they stripped the body off and they put it on a 65 Mustang over it. And this article kind of talked about how they did it, all the work to it, and then I actually saw it a few years later at Good Guys, and I went and looked at it, and I was just blown away at how good it looked.
That was a red one, wasn't it?
It was yellow.
Yellow?
Yeah, it was yellow. And there's probably been dozens. There probably was a
red one. I remember one being in Hot Rod, but I couldn't remember what color it was.
Yeah, but we talked about the Mustangs just because I feel like in the past 6 months, I always argue YouTube has like an algorithm that as soon as you watch one video, it'll give you a year's worth of suggestions for next videos.
I think that's true.
Yeah, I watched a video recently on one of these. I don't even know what they're called. Do they have a term for these conversions being made?
Not that I know of.
I don't know of one, but yeah, I watched a video on it was like a 2011, 2012 GT500, and they put a 67 body over it, and it was beautiful. You could tell because the track width. That's the problem. Is the track width changes because old cars are so small. Old muscle cars, old pony cars. The width and length are so different compared to the modern muscle cars. So you really have to adapt that over. So the track width always changes. So you could tell, they had to put fender flares on it. They had the big wheels and tires on it, but it was all in the factory, new car suspension and frame and chassis. So you could kind of tell something was really different about it, but I liked it. I thought it looked really good. I kind of like this theory. Again, it's not an every man's game. I mean, you really got to have some money to do it, or you got to have some skill. I've read on some forums, some people doing it in their garages, but I mean, it takes them years. I mean, they're fabricators. They know what they're doing.
Well, that's just it. You can work in any environment, but you got to know what you're doing, or just have a fat wallet.
Yeah, that's true. And thankfully, there's things out there nowadays that are kind of helping make things easier. Another question we had from people was OBD2. OBD2 readers, OBD2 scanners, Bluetooth diagnostic apps is a big thing right now. So OBD2 is onboard diagnostics 96 and up?
Yeah.
Okay, so 96 and up. It's basically your computer. Basically the computer that's in your cars. And, it used to be everyone would have to go to the shop, the dealership to get their car scanned, get it worked on. But anymore, it seems like I think I went to the grocery store the other day and I saw an OBD2 scanner for sale there. It seems like they're everywhere.
As far as I know, of course, I don't really shop around for them, but a lot of them, though, they don't tell you the things you really need to know. Like the ones for the EVAP and transmission codes and ABS codes, a lot of them are just engine scanners and that's it.
Yeah, you need to be able to do some researching on your own, which, thankfully we've got the internet.
And you really got to see live data sometimes too to really help out. It makes things a lot, like the Evan truck incident, having a scanner with live data would really make a complicated and inconsistent diagnosis job much easier.
Yeah, that's a sore spot right now. So we've got a friend with it's an 03 Silverado with a 4.3 V6. And it has fuel, air, spark, and timing, or at least to our best.
Yeah, it has all those. It has the ability to run, but it usually has way too much fuel that sometimes decides it only wants to run with certain sensors unplugged. And sometimes it just doesn't want to run at all.
And between Andy and I, we've been working on this thing for a couple months now, in our spare time, weekends here and there, but what do you think it is? I can't figure it out.
Too soon to tell. It's more than one problem, but it's just like it was biting you. It's biting me too. You think you got something figured out where you got a direction to go towards, and it changes its mind. It wants to react differently the next day. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's why a lot of people like these OBD2 scanners, because sometimes they'll give you codes, they can read them. Now, like I said, you need to be able to do your own research in the internet. You need to be able to go in and actually, it's not even hard. You just kind of go into Google if you've got one of these scanners, they give you out a code, usually a P0 code.
Well, a lot of them, though, if you get the higher end ones, they'll actually tell you the description of the code and potential causes. But honestly, they'll list off a whole long item list of potential causes, and then they're just kind of generalizing it. I don't know if it's really useful for diagnosis or not.
And that's the thing. I mean, is it really helping the general Joe Schmo? Is it really?
Probably
I don't
not.
know.
I think probably most of it is people will buy them and plug it into their car. And, oh, it's this code. Well, I don't know what to do with that. And they just end up taking it to a shop anyway.
Yeah.
Probably what happens a lot of the time.
Yeah, so it becomes kind of redundant, but I do think it's kind of neat where the market's going. Like for my Camaro, when I did the LS swap, a lot of the gauges didn't. Well, I should say none of the gauges worked. I got the mechanical gauges worked. I got oil pressure working. I got water temp going, but attack and fuel pressure and speedo, forget about it. But I actually found a gauge. It's called a scan gauge. I found it on Amazon, and it plugs into the OBD2, and it reads speedo, tack. Somehow it reads mile per gallon. I don't know how accurate it is, but it'll read oil pressure. It'll kind of read whatever the that specific OBD. Whatever the ECM will give it as far as information.
Yeah.
And I mean, this thing wasn't expensive. It was right around $100. And the information it gave me, you pluck it right there on the dash and it reads real time. I was really impressed with it. I'm really happy with it. It's still in the car. I've since gotten the tack working and a couple other things, but I'm really happy with it. I think it's really impressive what's going on. And I see ads all the time now for the readers that'll plug in and you download a smartphone app, and it'll tell you right there what's going on. But like you said, at the end of the day, what's it really giving you other than
Right.
a code and some suggestions? You still, a lot of times, you need that second opinion.
Yeah, sometimes though it does come in handy. Like if it says it's a camshaft sensor fault or something, that's going to be obvious. Okay, well, as long as the harness is good going to it, I'll put a sensor in it. It'll probably fix it. A lot of those situations, I'm sure it probably helps out some people, but I'm going to say probably most of them they just want to know what's wrong so they can take it to someone else.
Yeah, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think the general population, probably doesn't work on cars.
Right,
Hopefully,
yeah.
Hopefully the people watching this are at least interested in cars. I don't expect everybody to know how to change out their engine. That's not a common thing, but I like that these are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I like that these things are coming out. The market's trying to get people involved in their cars, trying to get people educated. I mean, it's good because it can't hurt.
No, not at all.
In theory, unless I know there's every now and then there's a consumer that'll take it into the dealership having read this code and they'll say, well, hey, the internet told me it's this, replace this. Because I've heard of this happening. Take it in a dealership, say it said it's this, replace this. The dealership will say, okay, we'll replace that part, get it back. Customer will say, well, that didn't fix it. And we'll say, well, yeah, you wanted a part replaced, not the problem resolved. So you kind of have to know, how you're phrasing it.
It's really no different than in the past, though. Someone taking their old Fairmont into, well, my brother said it needs a tune-up, and so give it a tune-up, and then it ends up needing a new fuel pump or something.
Yep.
That's just a modern version of the same thing, I think.
Yeah, people don't realize, when you go to a dealership, you really need to kind of tell them the problem, not necessarily what you think it is. They're going to figure it out. They're going to diagnose it. They're going to charge you a lot of money for that diagnostic fee, but they're going to fix, what they think is wrong with it, not necessarily what you do.
They're getting finicky with that now, too. The diagnostics.
Yeah, they are.
A friend of mine, that's all he ever used to do. He'd have a problem with his car. He'd take it to the dealer and pay the diagnostic fee to figure out what was wrong with it. He'd go fix it himself. Well, now half the time you try and do the same thing, and like say you're trying to figure out which cylinder's misfiring. That's all you want to know, just which cylinder's misfiring. You know which coil to replace. Well, you go in the dealer and they'll diagnose it and tell you it needs all the coils and all the plugs and all the wires, and they won't tell you what the actual code was for that cylinder.
Yeah, they'll kind of refrain from giving you a lot of the knowledge because they want you to go with them.
Yeah.
And that's just a good business model. I mean, never tell the consumer what you can get paid to to know and do, right? It's not. Excuse me. It's not. It's not how I try to live, but that's the free market.
Yep.
But no, it's cool where things are going with OBD2. We had another viewer ask about ways to be involved in the car community. Now, I thought this was kind of a funny one because I feel like I'm actually not that involved in the car community. Like I don't go to that many car shows. I don't. Unfortunately, I'm kind of that guy that doesn't add to the forum. I just read all the information on the forum. I'll comment every now and then, but I don't add as much as I should. But I mean, what do you think? What do you think's a good way to get into cars nowadays, or at least into the community of cars?
I have no good answer for that because I don't know. I think they used to have clubs and stuff, but at least in our area, they don't really have a whole lot that I know of. There's a couple. I know there's the one that's United Ford Owners, and they put on a lot of the local
UFO?
shows. Yeah, UFO.
UFO.
They've been around a long time, but I really don't know.
Yeah.
Other than just talking to people at gas stations or other car shows, just whoever I like your truck or I like your car. You stopping to talk to people, you might kind of get something going amongst other people. But
yeah, because you and I, we're both kind of, I don't want to say quiet guys, but we don't, we're not those people that cruise around every Friday and Saturday night in our hot rods and trying to forcefully, get out there in the community. But it was funny. This question kind of came from a guy who I know. He's actually a big car guy, but I think he was he had people in interest that might be wanting to get into cars. And for that, I kind of, again, I turn to the internet. I think it's a great time for car people or people wanting to learn stuff, people wanting to get into stuff, because forums. Mm-hmm. I see on a lot of forums when we'll use, for an example, LS1 Tech.
Yeah.
People, when you get into a certain engine or a certain type of car, there's generally a forum for every type of car. Or a forum for...
Not generally. There is a forum for every type of car.
There is. So I see on a lot of these forums, somebody will come on and, they'll introduce themselves. They'll say what car they've got, and they'll just try and get involved in that community. And it's an online community. It might not be in person, but that's a start. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a start. Another way to do it is to just kind of, like you said, you can go to car shows, just kind of Google your area. And, car events, automotive events, car shows. Car shows are a good way to meet people. You meet some interesting people at car shows, a lot of crazy people, a lot of good people. But again, it's just kind of about getting out there. It's just about putting yourself out there. I'm kind of bad about it because, gosh, I hate to admit this, but I feel like I only go to one car show a year, maybe two. Sometimes I go to Good Guys, the big one, and maybe like a real local one. What about you?
Well, I travel a lot, so I don't get to go nearly as many as I do. But if I'm home on a weekend and I know where there's actually a car show going on, then I'll try my best to get to it because I like wandering around and seeing what other people are doing and driving around. Yeah,
one thing I've kind of noticed just in my time growing up from when I first got my license is just neighborhoods. We live in the suburbs now, but I've noticed that you'll have people that you haven't met. You have your garage open so long and so many days and frequently, and working on your car, you'll start having neighbors you never met stop by. Mm-hmm. You'll start meeting people in the neighborhood. You start meeting people you've never met, people you didn't know. Start meeting car guys, maybe that guy that always drives by in that Mustang or that new Challenger that you hear, and you always kind of peek your head out the garage.
It might sound creepy, but that is one way to meet other car people.
I don't think I meant it creepy, but
no, on a not a nice weather afternoon on a weekend in the summertime, you just cruise through a neighborhood, you're looking through garages up, and you'll find car people.
yeah. I can personally say I've met a handful of my neighbors just from being into cars because they. And it was on them. It wasn't even on me. I think sometimes I probably scan my own lane a little too much. I kind of try to leave people alone. I kind of just keep to myself. But a lot of neighbors, just car guys, one of them, a Mustang guy, he stopped by one day. It's like, hey, I always see you're working on your car. Just, I'm so-and-so. And Yeah, I like it. And you get to talking, and that's kind of a long way to get involved in the car community. Kind of takes that's the long game way of doing it.
Sort of like door-to-door salesman.
Yeah, kind of. Not quite. You don't want to meet them with a shotgun as much, though. Yeah, I tell you, if I meet one more window salesman in this neighborhood. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to get involved in the car community. A lot of ways to get just out there, and I wish I had a specific scenario to give you, but just do it. Just get out there with your car, get online. Drive around the neighborhood, go to some car meets. Just and I say car meets, you just drive around sometimes on a Friday night. Sometimes you'll see some cars sitting somewhere, or you maybe end up with a little bit of a light-to-light race with somebody, and you end up talking to them. There's just so many ways to meet people anymore in the car community. But, yeah, I don't know. It's a good time. Good time between the internet and people. A lot of people are friendly these days. A lot of people aren't friendly.
Yeah.
I've met some people at some car shows that I tried to just ask them a question about the car, and they get pretty upset. And it's like, why are you even at a car show if you're going to be defensive? But that's very rare. Very rare. Most people are very, very nice. Most people want to talk about their cars and talk about what's going on. But one thing that, speaking about people talking about their cars, that I think's crazy, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. What do you think about the manufacturers stopping the sedans?
I think it's crazy. I don't care for it.
Yeah. Well, it was, who was it? Ford. Ford announced it early last year. They were going to stop making their Taurus and the Fusion and a couple others. God, I don't even know what it was. It was several
Well, I think
lines.
they're just sticking with the Mustang, and everything else is, trucks and SUVs. And I know Chevy's cutting back. I don't think all of the cars. They're still hanging on to. They canceled, I think, the Cruze and the Impala, but they're still hanging on the Malibu and stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, the Malibu might be at the chopping block too. I don't know, but I was going to say, yeah, Chevy followed suit at the end of 2018 as well. I couldn't believe it, and it blew my mind. I've had a lot of people come to me because they know I into cars. They come to me and say, "Kyle, what's going on? What's happening here?" And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just the market.
What? But even the market is the reason for it, because they're not selling as many sedans as crossovers and SUVs. But how long is that going to last? I mean, I think it's silly to just get rid of the sedans altogether. Because, well, I'm also sore about there's no station wagons anymore. I'm a station wagon kind of guy. Well, how's there going to be any market for a station wagon if no one builds station wagons anymore? Well, it's going to be the same thing with sedans. You think, how popular minivans were in the 90s. They were really, really trendy. Well, if all the car makers just abandoned sedans then and went with minivans, we'd all be stuck driving minivans right now, probably.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, if you get rid of something, that kind of cuts things off. Now, I hope the majority of manufacturers don't follow suit in this. I mean, those are two really big companies to do it, Ford and Chevy, and that made me nervous. I'm not happy with that decision, but I think a lot of it was just to do with, we kind of talked about the market of classic cars, but I feel like a lot of it was just to do with the market of new cars, because like I talked about with Chris, trucks, they make so much money, especially Ford, but I mean Chevy's right there. They make so much money from their truck lines that I think, and this is all speculation, I think a lot of it is just that they don't need to produce their cars. They're making so much money from trucks. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree with you, but they're kind of, everyone's saying that they need to have, a more fuel efficient vehicle for all they do is, drive A to B every day, and they just want economy. Well, you're going to lose some of that economy if all you have available is trucks and SUVs, and there's a lot of people that's all they care about is just, economy and going A to B. So they're kind of eliminating the market of what's supposed to be saving the automotive, the automotive industry, because with the fuel mileage requirements and everything, I just think it's all around hurting it.
Yeah, well, it's really counterintuitive because there's all these regulations coming out. There's these guidelines. there's all these dates that X amount of mileage is supposed to be implemented by then, and it's really counterintuitive when you stop your compact and mid-sized lines to only make trucks and sports cars, because Ford's going to keep making the Mustang, Chevy's going to keep making the Camaro and Corvettes. It just doesn't seem to. It's counterintuitive. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
And those don't even make sense to me because those are a lower volume vehicle compared to a four-door, mid-sized sedan, which, because there was the threat of the Mustang dying off, in the 70s and 80s, and then the Camaro that everybody knows died off, briefly. The lower volume cars, whether they were popular or not, those were the ones that got killed off to save the company money. Well, now they're killing off the ones that I believe still do make a decent amount of money. They're just not trendy, and they're just getting rid of them. I just think they just don't want to waste their time with them because it doesn't improve their current image.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, and a lot of it, I wonder if it's just because the economy's doing so well. I mean, I don't want to get into politics, but it just seems like the economy's doing so great that these companies feel like they can make these big moves, because that's a big move to cancel all these mid-sized lines, these compact lines. I mean, that is a big, bold business move. But what's going to happen if another recession comes around? I should say if another recession occurs and the market goes down, as it did a while back, what's going to happen? Are people still going to be able to afford these $60,000 trucks?
Yeah, there's going to be a whole lot of people that, well, there already is. There's a lot of people driving trucks that don't need to be. And that will change if we do come into another recession, but then they're not going to have anything else cheaper to pick from, because these crossovers and SUVs are just as expensive as the trucks are now. And they'll have better economy to save them some money. But
yeah, and I guess I shouldn't poke at the trucks so much, but because they're not going to stop making their truck lines. That's where a lot of the money's from, and then their sports car lines. But yeah, I mean, people a lot smarter than you and I. Sorry, but let's be honest. People a lot. These are analysts. These are people way up in the companies are making these decisions. So I'm sure they know what they're doing, but it's strange. It's just really strange.
I still go back to the minivans. They didn't cancel all sedans. It's just focus on minivans. They stuck with what kind of kept the company going decades previous to that, and I think they need to do the same now.
Yeah. Well, I'm really curious to see where things will be in 3 to 5 years as far as these companies cutting these lines off, because it could be a temporary thing. They could bring them right back. They could make more cuts worse off. I'm interested to see, because we can speculate what'll happen, and they're announcing that these cuts are going to happen. They might have already stopped making them.
I'm not sure. I think Ford was already canceling some.
Yeah.
But I'm not up on that.
Yeah, but it's pretty interesting. So I'm curious to see where things will be. Andy, one thing I like to do with all guests to kind of bring things around here and wrap things up. One thing I like to do with all the guests is ask dream cars. Dream cars. Reality versus sky's the limit. What is kind of your real obtainable dream car? It's one that you've always had on your mind.
My sky's the limit and my obtainable aren't going to be too far off from each other.
That's good. I like that.
My obtainable would just be because I think my 70 Impala is probably, again, it's hard to pick favorites, but that's probably my absolute favorite of pretty much any model or body style. That 70 Impala two-door custom coupe with the reverse curve concave rear window. Mm-hmm. Just having that just completely restored and in good shape where I can drive it around and enjoy it. That'd be the obtainable one.
So it would be a car you currently have?
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Just not a rough version of it.
I like that. That's pretty realistic. I like that. So it wouldn't be something. It wouldn't be some older Chevy that is maybe 30,000 or less. You would have one of yours restored. Yeah,
well, because the 70, that's why I have that Impala, is because it's my favorite body style, and I've always wanted one, and I finally got one about like 8 or 9 years ago, and that's it. If I could just have it nice and good shape, then yep, that'd be my obtainable.
So you own one of your dream cars?
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Not a lot of people can say that. That's really cool. I like that.
My dream car is very obtainable.
Well, it helps that we're into Chevy, Ford, and Chrysler. Yeah, that makes it easier. What about sky's the limit? What about no cap financially?
The exact same car that looks the same but can run 9s.
I didn't expect that. Andy, not even from you. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I like big things that go fast. So
I thought you were gonna say like a '69 427
nope,
something.
It'd be the same car, but it takes an awful lot of money to make. Well, one, it takes a lot of money to make a heavy car go fast, but it takes even more money to make one go fast and still look stock.
I didn't know you were such a '70 Impala guy.
Yeah.
I would have come up with more questions for Impalas if I had known this. Well, I'm sitting here saying you're a Camaro guy and your favorite car, Impala, dream car, Impala.
Well, even still, it's kind of an oddball car for someone to have as their favorite. I mean, the Impalas are the favorites of many, especially more recently. They've kind of gained popularity. But of the 65 through 70 platform, that's picking up in popularity. But the 70 is the least favorite year. It seems like people focus on the 65 through 67, and after that, they just really don't care anymore. But
yeah, well, that and the 64s. Between good old rap songs, 6'4". Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, I like 70s. They look good, but well, that answers my next question. It was going to be favorite car owned, but yeah. If you got a different answer for that, feel free to tell me. But
no, I don't know. That's probably still it.
All right, I sold him as the Camaro king, but he's the Impala king apparently.
Now, the second favorites are very, very close second.
Well, if you want to talk about those, feel free.
Well, my second favorite is probably my black 86 Camaro, the IROC Z.
Nice. Well, tell us a little bit about that one.
That one...
Is it a real IROC?
It is, yes. It was actually not originally black, though. I bought that car as a replacement for my first Camaro that was stolen, which was also a black 86 IROC Z.
Shoot.
But I bought it because it was... At the time, it had already been repainted. A terrible job, but it was black paint, black interior, T-tops, no rust. I bought it from out west, and it was a IROC Z, fully loaded, tune port, and all that. I got rid of the 700R4 automatics. I kept blowing those up, and got the T56 6-speed in it, which is one of the best things I ever did to the car. Everything else kind of pales in comparison to it, even the aluminum heads and camshaft and all that. I should have done the transmission first. Yeah,
it's amazing what putting a modern 6-speed in a car will do for drivability and just fun.
Mm-hmm.
Just fun overall. Nice. I like it. Well, Andy, we got to get off of here before I think we've probably already lost everybody at this point. So we're going to get off here before we lose our last couple people. Is there anything you'd like to close out with, talk about, discuss? Anything you want to tell people out there?
No, thanks for having me. I think you got a pretty good program going.
Well, thanks. We're trying. We're for not knowing what the hell we're doing, we're sure trying. So, well, Andy, I really appreciate you being here. I think we gave people a lot of information, probably more than they ever wanted to hear. But yeah, I really appreciate you being here, guys. I really appreciate you listening to Much As Wrench said here. I can't say enough about the positive feedback and everything. For just being something that I kind of came up with out of nowhere here, and just saying to hell with it and trying for it here. I'm really, really impressed with how many people, said they enjoyed it and even commented here and questions. We didn't even get to all the questions that people had written and comments that people wanted us to discuss. We'll have to save some of that for next time. But I really appreciate everybody listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time on Much As Wrench Said. Thanks, Andy, for being here.
Thank you.
See you guys.